Hi friends. Today we're going to talk about the first line in the Bodhisattva vow, beings are numberless, I vow to save them. Another common translation is beings are numberless, I vow to awaken with them. But either way, I think it's important to examine these lines. And as I like to say, the Bodhisattva vow is an affirmation of what is, not an aspiration of what we're trying to do. And I say that because I think if we approach this vow as I am going to save them, or save all of you, we're already running into a problem where we're creating separation between us and everything else. Because again, in Zen Buddhism, we say that all things are empty of inherent existence. We are all functionings and particularities of the universal reality. So this idea that I am going to save you or save them is already problematic because we have this separation, right? And so certainly I prefer the translation, I vow to awaken with all beings, rather than for or saving people. But I think we run into some other problems if we understand this just as an aspiration of this thing that we're trying to accomplish. The first is that it kind of creates this idea that like there's going to be some kind of permanent fixed state of saving, of salvation or something, in that like I am going to save you, and at some point in the future there will be a point where all beings will be saved because I did that. And we know that the world is constant change, so this idea that there's going to be some future fixed time where this is accomplished, all beings will be saved, and it will be a permanent state, kind of runs into some problems. So we already have this idea of causing separation and this idea of causing a fixed state, where I think understanding the Bodhisattva vow, at least only as an aspiration, is a little bit problematic. It's kind of like when I say the term my enlightenment doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because that would imply that I am here, enlightenment is separate from me and I get it, and it's separate from your enlightenment. But that's not really how it works. There's not my enlightenment that is separate from you, because then again, enlightenment would have to be some fixed thing that is separate from the rest of reality, rather than conditioned phenomena that's dependent on causes and conditions. So again, anytime I am going to save others, or I'm going to have enlightenment that is separate from you, this language, I think, reinforces our subconscious ideas of separation or a permanent fixed state, and it actually can lead to more delusion. The other thing is this idea that we have to do this thing until we accomplish a goal and then we're done is, again, I think a little problematic. Shantideva, who is an 8th century Indian monk who is credited with writing the Guide to the Bodhisattva Life, which is really very influential, particularly in Mahayana Zen. He said that liberation is in the enactment of the vow, not some future accomplishment. And so if we think about, we are engaging in this constant process of waking up. We are engaging in the practice of waking up. And we are doing this with and as all beings, rather than some kind of like top down, we're going to save other people to get to some future goal. I think it makes a lot of sense. I vow to engage in the practice of waking up with all beings. I vow to be with all beings in waking up. This is a lot closer to what's actually going on, where we're all engaged in the process of practice with the whole universe. And so if we think about, I vow to wake up with and as all beings, I vow to practice awakening with and as all beings, that the vow, the practice is the point, rather than some future accomplishment, some future end point. To me, this makes a lot more sense and does a really good job of describing what's actually going on. We are all engaged in this process of enacting, creating, experiencing the universe moment to moment. And a moment of awakening is a moment of awakening, not just my awakening. So we are vowing to engage in the reality of the Bodhisattva vow, rather than it's a task that we're going to accomplish. So I think that when we engage in the Bodhisattva vow, if we take it as an understanding, as a way to engage with what is, rather than a promise of some future goal, of some future state of permanent awakening for other people or other beings, because rocks and trees and bugs and humans are all other beings. It's a very different way to understand it, and to my mind creates a very different visceral response. Because I think a lot of people, if they understand is, I'm going to save all beings. Well, that's actually impossible. There's not going to be a state of all beingness, because beings are constantly arising and falling, life and death, right? New things all the time. Bells and rocks and trees are constantly shifting forms. There's never going to be a point where there is a fixed beingness across the universe and we're going to save it. And so that's like, well, that's impossible. That's a downer. That's depressing. Now I feel grim. And as my teacher is very fond of saying, bodhisattvas are never grim. And so I think if we understand the bodhisattva vow in a very dualistic separation way, it can lead us towards grimness. Whereas if we understand the bodhisattva vow as an affirmation of all of us being engaged in the practice of waking up moment per moment, that is much more liberative, much more life-giving, much more fun, right? We vow to engage in awakening with and as all beings. That's much more joyful than I'm going to be like Sisyphus trying to push this boulder up the hill. So this is a way that I think is a helpful lens to approach the bodhisattva vow through, right? This is an affirmation of what is going on rather than some impossible task. I think it's very helpful. So we'll tackle the next line next time, but just remember that when we say we vow to save or we vow to awaken with all beings, that's what's going on right now, and we are vowing to be aware of it and engage in it in an active way, in a conscious way. It's not an impossible task that we're going to get depressed and grim about because we can never accomplish it. Thank you.